Do you ever feel like some people just don't care about the big game? While millions are screaming at their TVs, a huge chunk of people feel nothing. Ever wonder why? What if I told you their brain is actually built differently than a die-hard fan's? Stick with me, because in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to use neuroscience to prove why your indifference isn't a personality flaw. It's a psychological advantage. Point 1. Not caring is normal. First, let me be crystal clear, and this is the most important takeaway. Not caring about sports does not make you boring. It does not mean you lack passion. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. We're going to shut down that myth right now. But here's the fascinating psychological question. If 60% of Americans, maybe even more globally, are completely captivated by sports, what is happening in your brain that sets you apart? It's not a flaw. It's a difference in how your brain is wired for certain kinds of stimulation and social connection. If you've ever felt isolated in a sports-obsessed world, recognize that your psychological wiring is simply pointing you toward different, equally valid, and often more internally driven pursuits. You are not a passionless void. You are a person with a specific set of interests that lie outside the arena. Point 2. The tribal instinct. Why you're obsessed. And why that's not your fault. The answer is deep in your DNA. Thousands of years ago, your tribe wasn't a metaphor. It was your life insurance policy. Being part of the group meant safety, food, and survival. Get kicked out? You were toast. Your brain developed a super powerful wiring system to prioritize group belonging. Fast forward to 2026. Your survival doesn't depend on the local hunters. It depends on, well, a paycheck. But your primal brain hasn't gotten the memo. It still craves that intense, unshakable group identity. And what have we created to satisfy this ancient hunger? The sports team. Think of modern sports teams as a curated, high-status version of your ancient tribe, but with better uniforms and multi-million-dollar contracts. When you put on that jersey, you're not just wearing a logo. You are signaling your unbreakable allegiance. You're saying, I belong to them. Here's the wild psychological secret. It all comes down to a tiny chemical called oxytocin. It is the bonding hormone. It's what makes a mother bond with her newborn. It's what makes you feel love for your partner. It's also the same chemical your brain floods itself with when your team scores. Your brain literally tricks you into feeling a deep familial connection with people you've never met. When the team wins, your brain perceives it as a tribal victory, a survival win, and you get a massive hit of feel-good chemicals. When they lose, it's a tribal threat, a primal form of grief. This isn't just about fun. This is deep-seated, evolutionary psychology playing out in a stadium. It's the closest thing modern society offers to that ancient, life-or-death tribal unity. That's why the collective roar of a stadium is one of the most powerful sounds on the planet. It's the sound of 1,000 people's ancient tribal instincts firing all at once. Point 3. The non-fan's brain. If you are not intensely interested in something like a sports team, you likely have what experts describe as lower tribal instincts. This means your sense of who you are is not heavily dependent on being part of a specific group. Instead, you tend to see yourself more as an individual. You think things like, my happiness and completeness don't rely on being on a team or in a fan club. Scientific studies support this idea. People who aren't very interested in sports show much less us versus them thinking. This simply means you don't automatically dislike the opposing team just because they are rivals to the one you might loosely support. Point 4. The dopamine addiction. Here's the worrying truth. The brain of a sports fan, while they are watching a game, is working very hard. Think about the exciting feeling you get right before you unwrap a present. The feeling is caused by a chemical called dopamine. Sports fans get this exact same rush of dopamine constantly throughout a game, with every single play and possession. This continuous feeling of anticipation and reward is essentially addictive. Brain scans have actually shown that when you watch your favorite team play, the same parts of your brain that are activated during gambling light up. Point 5. The slot machine effect. Here's the kicker. The uncertainty makes it so powerful. You can't be sure if you will succeed. This lack of predictability causes the chemical called dopamine to be released in your brain, which feels good. This is known as intermittent reinforcement, which is the most habit-forming pattern of reward studied in psychology. It uses the same trick that makes gambling on slot machines so compelling. Your brain is constantly seeking out another burst of that feel-good dopamine. Point 6. Why do you skip the hit? If you are not interested in something, watching someone else compete in it won't make your brain release dopamine, the feel-good chemical. Interestingly, Scientists believe this lack of interest might actually be genetic. It's possible that your complete lack of concern about who wins a sports championship might literally be written in your DNA. Point 7. Stable self-esteem. When your sense of self-worth is stable, it means you feel good about yourself, regardless of what happens outside of your control. For example, some sports fans tie their personal feelings of success to their team's performance. They might say, "We won," when their team is victorious, taking personal credit for the win. But when their team loses, they distance themselves by saying, "They lost." This shows their self-esteem is shifting based on external events. If your self-esteem is stable, you are less likely to do this. You don't need to rely on victories that you didn't cause, like a sports team winning, to feel like a successful person. Point 8. Empathy re-rooted. There is an interesting way to look at this. Sports fans actually feel a lot of empathy. They regularly practice caring deeply about the athletes they don't even know personally. However, if you are someone who isn't interested in sports, your capacity for empathy doesn't disappear. Instead, you just direct those strong feelings toward other areas of your life. This might involve caring about important social causes, investing deeply in your personal relationships, focusing on creative projects, or tackling complex intellectual challenges. One study discovered that people who weren't very interested in sports tended to score higher in being open to new experiences and having a strong appreciation for art. You are getting your intense emotional satisfaction from things like music, enjoying nature, and exploring new ideas. You are still looking for meaning in life, but you find it in different places than a sports fan does. Point 9. The meaning difference. This explains everything. It comes down to how you experience meaning. Fans find meaning in narrative, the underdog, the comeback, the rivalry. It's real-life drama. Non-fans see the randomness as meaningless. You think, why would I emotionally invest in an outcome I can't control that doesn't affect my life? Neither side is wrong. It's just two different ways of fulfilling the human need for a story. One group finds its epic narrative on the field. The other finds it in a novel, a relationship, or a scientific discovery. So, what does all this mean? If you don't care about the big game, you're not missing out on some core human experience. You're just different. Your brain's reward system, your tribal instincts, your focus, they are all calibrated differently. And that is totally okay. The next time someone asks, "Did you see the game?" and you genuinely don't care, remember this. You're not broken. You're not boring. You are simply playing a different game, one that might, just maybe, have higher stakes in your own life. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this, and leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts.